On New Year's Eve, the paralyzed Korean Mafia boss was left completely alone until a black waitress made one decision that changed everything. Lee Jun-young had learned that rock bottom has basements. 6 months ago, he'd ruled Los Angeles' Koreatown from a penthouse office, commanding respect with a glance and fear with a word. Now he sat in a corner booth at Moonlight Cafe at 11:47 p.m. on New Year's Eve, watching couples toast champagne while his legs, useless, dead weight, rested against the wheelchair he'd grown to hate. The chrome handles caught the fairy lights strung across the windows, mocking him with their cheerful glow. Around him, the cafe buzzed with celebration. Groups of friends made resolutions they wouldn't keep. Lovers kissed early, too impatient for midnight. And Jun-young sat alone, black turtleneck hiding most of the dragon tattoo that crept up his neck. The mark of his former power, now just ink on a broken man. His Americano had gone cold an hour ago, but he couldn't make himself leave. Going back to his apartment meant facing another empty night in another empty year. You planning to sit here until next New Year's, or can I get you a fresh cup? The voice came from above, rich and warm with a hint of South in the accent. Jun-young looked up into the face of Selena Morrison, the waitress who'd been refilling his cup every day for the past 3 months. 26, beautiful in a way that didn't need effort, natural hair pulled back in a puff, skin like polished mahogany, eyes that actually saw him instead of his wheelchair. "I'm fine," Jun-young said, his English nearly accentless after years in LA, though he softened his consonants the way his mother had taught him. "You should be celebrating, not working." "Should be a lot of things." Selena gestured to the empty booth across from him. "Mind if I take a break? My feet are screaming, and you're the only customer not trying to grab my ass or ask if I come with the coffee." Something almost like a smile touched Jun-young's lips. Over 3 months of daily visits, they'd developed an easy rapport. She never asked about the wheelchair, never treated him with pity or excessive care, just brought him coffee and occasionally sat to complain about difficult customers or share gossip about the neighborhood. It was the most normal human interaction he'd had since the accident. "Sit," he said, "but only if you tell me why you're working on New Year's Eve instead of out with someone." Selena slid into the booth with a grateful sigh, propping her feet up on the opposite seat. "Because rent doesn't care about holidays and tips are good tonight. Drunk people tip heavy." She studied him with those sharp eyes. "Your turn. Why are you here alone? Man like you should have somewhere to be." "A man like me," Jun-young repeated, voice flat. "You mean a man in a wheelchair?" "I mean a man who drinks his coffee black, tips exactly 25%, reads Korean newspapers on his phone, and has expensive taste in watches." She nodded at the Patek Philippe on his wrist, the only piece of his old life he'd kept. "Wheelchair's just how you get around, not who you are." The observation caught him off guard. Most people couldn't see past the chair. They either stared with pity or looked away quickly, embarrassed by his brokenness. But Selena had never done either. From day one, she'd treated him like a regular customer who happened to use wheels instead of legs. "I don't have anywhere to be," Jun-young admitted. "The people I used to know, they disappeared when I became this. Then they weren't worth knowing." Selena's response was immediate, definitive. "Real people stick around when shit gets hard. Everyone else is just scenery." Before Jun-young could respond, the cafe owner, an elderly Korean woman named Mrs. Yang, called out in Korean from behind the counter. Selena stood, but not before touching Jun-young's shoulder briefly. "Don't go anywhere. I'll be back." He watched her navigate the crowded cafe, declining drink offers and deflecting flirtation with practiced ease. She moved with unconscious grace, confident in her body in a way that made his chest ache. He'd taken movement for granted before the accident, taken everything for granted. The memory hit without warning. The ambush, his car forced off the road on Mulholland Drive. The sickening crunch of metal and bone as his vehicle rolled 3 times before slamming into a tree. He'd been conscious through all of it, felt every impact, known the moment his spine shattered that his life as he knew it was over. His lieutenant, Dae-young, had pulled him from the wreckage. Doctors had saved his life but couldn't save his legs. Paralyzed from the waist down, they'd said, as if those clinical words could encompass the destruction of everything he'd built. His organization had fractured immediately. Weakness was blood in the water, and sharks circled fast. Within weeks, rivals had absorbed his territory. His men had scattered or sworn loyalty to new masters. And Jun Young, the youngest boss in the city's history, the man who'd consolidated 3 gangs under his rule by age 25, became irrelevant. Okay, Selena said, sliding back into the booth and pulling him from the dark spiral of memory. Mrs. Yang wants to close early. Last call. So I'm asking you one more time. You really want to spend midnight alone in an empty cafe? Or you want to do something about this sad-ass situation? Jun Young frowned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we go celebrate. You and me. There's a spot downtown. Rooftop bar with a view of the fireworks. No stairs, all accessible, before you worry about that. She leaned forward, eyes challenging. I've watched you come in here every single day for 3 months, drinking coffee alone, looking like you're waiting for permission to exist again. It's New Year's Eve. Time to stop waiting. You don't know anything about me, Jun Young said, but there was no heat in it. I know you're lonely. I know you're stuck in some kind of prison you built in your head. And I know that sitting alone on New Year's Eve is the saddest thing I've seen all year. And I served coffee to a guy who cried into his oatmeal for 40 minutes yesterday. She stood, extending her hand. Come on. What's the worst that could happen? You have a terrible time with a pushy waitress? At least it's something different. Jun Young stared at her hand. 6 months ago, he would have dismissed this. A waitress, a nobody, presuming to rescue him. But 6 months ago, he'd been someone else. Someone who measured worth by power and control. Now, looking at Selena's open, honest face, he realized she was offering him something he hadn't had in half a year. A choice. Not treatment or therapy or pity. Just a simple invitation to be human again. The worst that could happen, he said slowly, is that I actually enjoy myself and remember what I lost. Or, Selena countered, you enjoy yourself and remember what's still possible. Either way, you're feeling something. Better than numb. He took her hand. Her grip was strong, calloused from long shifts and hard work, and when she smiled, really smiled, it felt like the first warm thing he'd experienced since waking up in a hospital bed. Okay, Jun Young said. Let's go. Getting out of the cafe was the first challenge. Jun Young's wheelchair was manual, custom-made and expensive, but still required upper body strength he'd had to rebuild from nothing. The ramp was steep, and he felt Selena tense beside him, clearly wanting to help but smart enough not to without asking. I've got it, he said, muscles straining as he maneuvered onto the street. Unless the angle's too much, then I'll take help. I'm stubborn, not stupid. Good to know the difference, Selena said lightly, but he caught the approval in her voice. She grabbed her coat from inside, a puffy jacket that had seen better years, and locked the cafe door behind them. My car's around the corner. Fair warning, it's a 2005 Honda Civic with a broken radio and a check engine light that's been on for 2 years. Not what you're used to. How do you know what I'm used to? Selena shot him a look. Baby, I've been serving coffee in Koreatown for 4 years. I know expensive when I see it. That watch, those custom wheelchair wheels, the way you carry yourself even sitting down. You're not some regular guy who got unlucky. You were someone important. Maybe still are. Under all that self-pity, the assessment was so accurate it stole his breath. I was, he admitted. Now I'm just a man who can't walk. See, that's where you're wrong. They reached her car, exactly as described, slightly dented, definitely overdue for maintenance. Selena opened the passenger door. You're a man who can't walk yet still gets himself to a cafe every day, who rebuilt enough strength to use a manual chair instead of electric, who hasn't completely given up even though I can see in your eyes that you've thought about it. Jun Young froze. What makes you think? Because I've been there. Selena's voice was soft but steady. Different reasons. Same darkness. I know what it looks like when someone's deciding if they want to keep going. And I've watched you fight that decision every day for 3 months. She gestured to the car. Can you transfer yourself or you want help? I can do it. Jun Young positioned his wheelchair, locked the brakes, and hauled himself into the passenger seat with practiced efficiency. It wasn't graceful, and his legs dragged uselessly, but he managed. Selena folded his wheelchair without being asked, loading it into her trunk with surprising ease. You've done this before, Jun Young observed as she slid into the driver's seat. My uncle, MS. He used a chair for the last 5 years of his life. Selena started the engine, which coughed dramatically before catching. Taught me that disabled doesn't mean helpless, and helping doesn't mean taking over. You tell me what you need, and I'll provide it. Otherwise, I mind my business. They drove through LA's nighttime streets, heading downtown. The city was alive with celebration, people spilling out of bars, cars honking, the chaotic joy of a year ending and another beginning. June Young watched it all through the window, feeling simultaneously part of and separate from the revelry. "Why are you really doing this?" he asked. "You don't know me. For all you know, I'm dangerous." Selena laughed, the sound genuine and unforced. "Baby, I grew up in Compton. I know dangerous. You're not it. Damaged, yeah. Angry, definitely. But dangerous? Nah." She glanced at him. "Besides, I've got good instincts about people. Comes with the job. You read people fast when you're serving them. And you're one of the good ones pretending to be bad because it's easier than being vulnerable. You got all that from coffee service? That and the fact that you always say thank you. Even on your worst days when I can see you're barely holding it together, you never forget your manners. Mean people don't do that." She turned onto a side street. "Also, you tipped Marcus, the new guy who spilled coffee on you last week, the same 25% you tip everyone else. Didn't yell, didn't make him feel small. That says something." June Young had forgotten that incident, but Selena was right. He'd been raised to treat service workers with respect. His mother had worked 3 jobs to put him through school before he'd taken a different path. Before he'd chosen power over principle and violence over virtue. "I wasn't always a good person," he said quietly. "None of us are always anything. We're just people making choices." Selena pulled into a parking garage. "Tonight, you're choosing not to be alone. That's good enough." The rooftop bar was called Vertigo, and it lived up to its name. 60 floors up, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of downtown LA. Selena had been right. It was fully accessible, with a dedicated elevator and smooth floors throughout. But it was also expensive, the kind of place June Young had frequented in his former life. "This is too much," he said as they entered. The space was packed with beautiful people in designer clothes, champagne flowing freely. "It's New Year's Eve. Nothing's too much." But Selena's eyes widened slightly at the prices on the menu. June Young noticed. He'd always been observant, and wealth had made him attuned to the way people reacted to money. "The hell you are! I invited you. And I'm a man who can't walk, not a man who can't pay for drinks." June Young pulled out his credit card. Black, unlimited. One of the few things he'd kept from his old life. "I insist. Considerate payment for rescuing me from another depressing night." Selena looked like she wanted to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. "Fine, but I'm buying the next round." "Deal." They found a spot near the windows, away from the loudest crowds. A server appeared immediately. Young, trendy, the kind who could smell money. His eyes flickered to June Young's wheelchair with barely concealed discomfort before focusing on Selena with obvious appreciation. "What can I get you to?" the server asked, directing the question at Selena while positioning himself to block June Young slightly. June Young felt the old anger rise, that instinct to put people in their place, to demand respect through fear. But before he could speak, Selena leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can start by addressing my friend here, since he's the one paying, and maybe work on your customer service skills while you're at it." The server flushed, suddenly noticing the expensive watch, the quality of June Young's clothing, the quiet authority he still carried despite the chair. "Of course. Sir, my apologies. What would you like?" "Bottle of Dom Perignon," June Young said, voice cool. "The 2008 if you have it. 2 glasses." The server's eyes widened. That was a $500 bottle, but he nodded quickly and disappeared. Selena looked at June Young with raised eyebrows. "Dom Perignon? Really?" "It's New Year's Eve, and you're right, nothing's too much." He allowed himself a small smile. "Besides, I wanted to see your face when I ordered it. My face is saying you're ridiculous and I'm keeping you around." But Selena was grinning. "Though I should warn you, my champagne experience is limited to Andre from the corner store. I might not appreciate the difference." "Then I'll teach you." The words came out before June Young could stop them, intimate in a way he hadn't intended. "The difference is in the bubbles. Cheap champagne, they're aggressive, fast. Good champagne, they're delicate, persistent. Like the difference between lust and, Selena prompted when he stopped, and something more lasting." He couldn't bring himself to say love. That word belonged to a different life, a different version of himself. The champagne arrived in a silver bucket, condensation already forming on the bottle. The server poured with practiced flourish, then retreated quickly. Jun Young raised his glass, watching the bubbles rise in perfect columns. "What are we toasting to?" Selena asked. Jun Young considered. 6 months ago, he would have toasted to power, to victory, to the empire he was building. But sitting here with this woman who'd chosen to spend her New Year's Eve with a broken stranger, those things felt hollow. "To unexpected kindness," he said finally, "and to people who see past surfaces." "To second chances," Selena countered, touching her glass to his, "and to stubborn men who finally say yes to living." The champagne was perfect, delicate, complex, everything Jun Young had said it would be. He watched Selena taste it, saw her eyes widen with genuine pleasure, and felt something warm unfold in his chest. Something he'd thought died in the accident. "Okay, you were right," Selena admitted. "This is way better than Andre. Like, exponentially better." "Told you." Jun Young leaned back, allowing himself to relax for the first time in months. Around them, the crowd grew louder as midnight approached. Someone had turned up the music. Couples moved closer together, anticipating the countdown. "So," Selena said, refilling both their glasses, "you going to tell me what really happened? Why the most observant person I know hasn't asked?" "Car accident, 6 months ago." The words came easier than expected, maybe because of the champagne, maybe because Selena made confession feel safe. "I was in a dangerous line of work, made enemies. Someone decided to eliminate me. But they failed." "Did they?" Jun Young gestured at his legs. "I lost everything. My position, my power, my purpose. The man I was died in that accident. This is just what's left." Selena was quiet for a moment, studying him with those sharp, seeing eyes. Then she said, "My mama always told me that sometimes God breaks us down so he can rebuild us, right? Maybe you lost what you were supposed to lose. Maybe the man you were needed to die so someone better could grow." "You believe in God?" Jun Young asked, deflecting from the uncomfortable accuracy of her words. "I believe in something bigger than us. Call it God, call it the universe, call it karma. Doesn't matter. What matters is that sometimes the worst thing that happens to us becomes the best thing." Eventually, she sipped her champagne. "You were in a dangerous line of work. Past tense. What are you now?" "Nothing. No one." "Bullshit." The word was sharp, cutting. "You're Lee Jun Young. You survived an assassination attempt. You learned to navigate life from a wheelchair in 6 months. You still have the strength to get yourself to that cafe every single day, even though I know some days you don't want to get out of bed at all. You're not nothing. You're in transition. There's a difference." The conviction in her voice shook something loose in Jun Young's carefully constructed walls. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're kind to service workers. I know you read Korean newspapers, which means you care about where you came from. I know you overtip Marcus even though he's terrible at his job, which means you remember what it's like to struggle. And I know you showed up alone on New Year's Eve, which means you've lost people who mattered." She met his eyes steadily. "That's enough to care about." "You're remarkable," Jun Young said quietly. "Has anyone told you that?" Selena laughed, but there was something brittle in it. "Mostly I get told I'm too much. Too loud, too opinionated, too black for some spaces, too ghetto for others. My last boyfriend said dating me was exhausting because I had opinions about everything." "Your last boyfriend was an idiot." "Yeah, well, I have excellent taste in men, obviously." She gestured at him with her champagne glass. "Case in point, spending New Year's Eve with a former crime boss who orders $500 champagne on a random Tuesday. It's New Year's Eve, not Tuesday. My point stands." Selena leaned forward conspiratorially. "So what was it like, being a crime boss? And before you deny it, I'm from South LA. I know what a gang tattoo looks like, even half hidden under a turtleneck." Jun Young's hand moved unconsciously to his neck, where the dragon's tail disappeared beneath fabric. It was intoxicating, terrifying, lonely. I had power, money, respect, at least the kind that comes from fear, but I was always looking over my shoulder, always calculating threats, always aware that one mistake could be fatal. Sounds exhausting. It was, but it was also who I was. My father built that empire from nothing, came to America with nothing, and created something powerful. When he died, I was barely 21, but I took over. Spent the next 7 years expanding, consolidating, becoming the youngest boss in the city's history. He stared into his champagne, watching the bubbles rise. And then one drive home, and it all ended. Just like that. What happened to your organization? Absorbed by rivals, scattered. My second-in-command, Dae-jung, tried to hold it together, but without me, Jun-young shook his head. In that world, weakness is death. A leader who can't walk can't lead. They moved on. Did Dae-jung? The question was too perceptive. No, he calls every week, visits when I let him, which isn't often, sends money I don't need. He feels guilty. Maybe he feels loyal. Loyalty doesn't exist in that world, only utility. But even as Jun-young said it, he knew it wasn't entirely true. Dae-jung had been his friend before his subordinate, had pulled him from the wreckage, stayed at the hospital through every surgery, hired the physical therapists and nurses Jun-young had eventually fired for treating him like an invalid. Sounds like you're scared, Selena observed. Of what? Of letting people see you like this. Of accepting help. Of admitting that maybe you need someone. She said it gently without judgment, but the words hit like bullets. You're very presumptuous for someone I met 3 months ago. And you're very defensive for someone drinking $500 champagne with a woman who's trying to show you a good time. Selena's smile softened the words. I'm not trying to fix you, Jun-young. I'm just trying to remind you that you're still alive. That's worth celebrating. Before Jun-young could respond, someone bumped into his wheelchair. Hard. Champagne sloshed over the rim of his glass as the chair rolled backward. A drunk man in an expensive suit laughed, not noticing or not caring about what he'd done. The old Jun-young would have responded with violence, would have had the man on the ground before he could apologize, would have taught him respect through pain. But that Jun-young had power, had use of his legs, had the ability to enforce his will through force. This Jun-young could only sit there, rage and helplessness warring in his chest. But Selena stood, walked directly to the drunk man, who was easily a foot taller than her, and tapped his shoulder with one finger. Hey! Her voice cut through the music, sharp and clear. You just hit my friend's wheelchair and didn't apologize. Fix that, now. The drunk man turned, eyes traveling over Selena with obvious disdain. It was an accident. Chill out. It was careless, and you're going to apologize. Or I'm going to make a scene so loud that everyone in this bar knows what kind of man you are. Jesus. Fine, sorry. The man glanced at Jun-young dismissively. Didn't see you there. That's the problem, Selena said, voice dropping to something dangerous. You didn't see him. You didn't see a person, just an obstacle. So let me make this clear. That man you just hit is worth 10 of you. He's kinder, smarter, and definitely has better taste in champagne. And if you ever disrespect him again, I'll personally ensure everyone here knows you're the type of asshole who bumps wheelchairs and doesn't apologize. The drunk man stared at her, shocked into silence. Then he muttered another apology and retreated quickly. Selena returned to her seat completely unbothered and picked up her champagne glass like nothing had happened. You didn't have to do that, Jun-young said, voice rough with emotion he couldn't name. Yeah, I did. Because that's what people do for people they care about. They stand up. They fight back. They refuse to let anyone diminish them. She met his eyes. You've spent 6 months being invisible, Jun-young, getting smaller and quieter, trying not to take up space. I see you, and I'm not going to let anyone treat you like you don't matter. Something cracked in Jun-young's chest, a wall he'd built carefully, brick by brick, to protect himself from exactly this kind of vulnerability. Because Selena's fierce defense, her refusal to let him be dismissed, was more intimate than anything physical. It said, you're worth protecting. You matter. You're seen. Thank you, he managed. Don't thank me for basic decency. But Selena's smile was soft, almost shy. Besides, I meant every word. You are worth 10 of that asshole. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the crowd surge and swell as midnight approached. The countdown had started somewhere. People shouting numbers, phones out to capture the moment, champagne glasses raised in anticipation. 10, 9, 8. I haven't kissed anyone at midnight in 3 years, Selena said suddenly. 7, 6, 5. Jun Young's heart rate spiked. Is that an invitation? 4, 3, 2. If you want it to be. Selena leaned closer, eyes sparkling with champagne and something deeper. 1. Happy New Year! Jun Young kissed her as fireworks exploded over the city. Kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Kissed her like she'd given him permission to be human again, to feel something other than pain and loss. Her lips were soft, tasting of expensive champagne and cheaper lipstick, and when she kissed him back, threading her fingers through his hair, he felt something he hadn't felt in 6 months. Hope. When they broke apart, the city was alive with celebration. Fireworks painted the sky in gold and silver. Strangers hugged and toasted. And Jun Young, sitting in his wheelchair with lipstick on his mouth and his heart pounding, felt like maybe, just maybe, this year could be different. Happy New Year, Jun Young, Selena whispered, forehead pressed to his. Happy New Year, Selena. He pulled back slightly, studying her face. Thank you. For tonight. For seeing me. For recognizing that you're more than what happened to you? She smiled. That's easy. You just had to let me. They stayed until the bar closed at 2 a.m., drinking champagne and talking about everything and nothing. Selena told him about growing up in Compton with 3 brothers, about her mother who cleaned houses to send her kids to private school, about the scholarship to UCLA she'd turned down when her father got sick and someone needed to work, about dreams deferred but not forgotten. Jun Young found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone. The pressure of inheriting his father's empire at 21, the loneliness of command, the constant fear of showing weakness, the relief, buried under all the grief and rage, of being released from that burden, the terror of not knowing who he was without power. You're whoever you choose to be, Selena said simply. The accident didn't take that from you. It just removed the mask you were wearing. Outside LA was quieter now, the celebration fading into hangovers and regret. Selena drove them back through empty streets, the Honda's broken radio meaning they rode in companionable silence. When they reached Jun Young's building, a modest apartment in Koreatown, nothing like the penthouse he'd once owned, she put the car in park but didn't move to get his wheelchair. I had a good time tonight, she said. Better than good. Best New Year's Eve I've had in years. Me too. Jun Young hesitated, then took the risk. Would you want to do this again? Not New Year's Eve, obviously. Just spend time together. Like a date? Like a date. His heart pounded, waiting for rejection. For her to realize that dating a man in a wheelchair, a former criminal with no prospects and a shattered life, was too much trouble. Okay, Selena said, smile spreading across her face, but I have conditions. 1, you don't use your money to try to impress me. I don't care about expensive champagne or fancy restaurants. I care about who you are, not what you can buy. Agreed. 2, you're honest with me about your past, your present, what you're dealing with. I can handle truth. I can't handle lies. Agreed. 3, you work on forgiving yourself for whatever you did before, for surviving when maybe you didn't think you deserved to, for needing help sometimes. Because Jun Young, you're allowed to be human. You're allowed to be broken and healing at the same time. The 3rd condition was the hardest, but he nodded. I'll try. That's all I'm asking. Selena leaned across the console and kissed him again, soft and sweet. Now go get some sleep. I'll see you at the cafe tomorrow for your usual Americano. Tomorrow's New Year's Day. You're not working. I'll make an exception. Her smile was radiant. Besides, someone needs to make sure you actually leave your apartment. She helped him transfer to his wheelchair, then pulled away with a wave. Jun Young sat in the cool night air for a long moment, watching her taillights disappear, and realized he was smiling. Actually smiling, for the first time since the accident. The next morning, Jun Young woke with a champagne headache and something unfamiliar, anticipation. He showered with the medical setup he'd installed. Grab bars, shower chair, the indignity of needing modifications to perform basic tasks. But today, the routine felt less like defeat and more like simple necessity. At 10 a.m., he was at Moonlight Cafe. Selena was there, looking tired but beautiful in her work uniform, hair pulled up in the same puff style. When she saw him, her face lit up in a way that made his chest tight. Americano, she asked, voice teasing. Please, and June Young took a breath. Your number? If the offer for a real date still stands in daylight. Selena wrote her number on a napkin in purple ink, adding a small heart at the end. It stands. Text me when you figure out what kind of date doesn't involve spending ridiculous amounts of money. That might take me a while. I've got time. She delivered his coffee, fingers brushing his deliberately. And June Young, last night wasn't pity or charity. I like you, the you that exists right now. Just wanted to make that clear. She walked away before he could respond, leaving June Young staring at a napkin with 10 digits and a heart, feeling like he'd been handed something infinitely precious. The first date was a disaster. June Young, overthinking everything, chose a restaurant that claimed to be accessible, but had a bathroom door too narrow for his wheelchair. Selena handled it with grace, but June Young spent the entire meal tense and humiliated, hyper-aware of every obstacle his disability created. I'm sorry, he said when she drove him home. This was a mistake. I'm not ready for this. For dating, for putting someone through. Stop. Selena cut the engine, turning to face him fully. You don't get to decide what I can handle. Yeah, tonight had challenges. So what? Every relationship has challenges. Yours just happened to involve checking accessibility ahead of time. It's not just that. It's everything. I can't protect you the way I used to be able to. Can't take you places without worrying about stairs or narrow doorways. Can't even hold you properly because I need my arms for the wheelchair. First, I don't need protection. I'm a grown woman from Compton who survived way worse than whatever you're worried about. Second, I don't care about where we go as long as we're together. And third, she leaned across, cupping his face. You held me just fine last night when you kissed me. Your arms worked perfectly for what mattered. Selena, no, listen to me. I've thought about this, about what I'm signing up for. I know dating you means planning differently, being aware of accessibility, maybe dealing with stares from ignorant people. But June Young, every person comes with complications. At least yours are visible. She kissed him softly. Give us a chance, a real chance, not one date where everything has to be perfect. Why? The question burst out, raw and desperate. Why me? You could be with anyone. Someone whole, someone without this much baggage. Because you're kind even when you're angry. Because you tip the new guy who spills coffee. Because you read newspapers in your mother's language, and that tells me you remember where you came from. Because when you kiss me, I feel like I'm the only person in the world. Her voice dropped. And because I've watched you fight your way back to living for 3 months, and that's the bravest thing I've ever seen. June Young felt tears prick his eyes. He who hadn't cried since waking up paralyzed, who'd taken the loss of everything with stoic acceptance. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but I don't care about deserve. I care about want, and I want you. She kissed him again, deeper this time. So stop trying to talk me out of this and just say yes. Say yes to trying, to giving us a real shot. Yes, June Young whispered against her lips. Yes, okay. Yes. The second date was better. Selena chose the location, a park with paved paths, accessible picnic tables, and no stairs anywhere. She brought homemade food, unpacked it with the unself-conscious confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. My mama's recipe, she said, handing him a container of something that smelled incredible. Oxtail stew. Fair warning, it's spicy. June Young tasted it and felt flavor explode across his tongue. Rich, complex, with heat that built gradually. This is amazing. Mama said the secret is patience. You can't rush good oxtail. Has to cook slow, let all the flavors develop. Selena watched him eat with obvious satisfaction. She also said I should bring you by sometime. Meet the family. June Young nearly choked. Your family? Eventually, not yet. But June Young, I don't do casual. I told you that. If we're doing this, I'm introducing you to my people. They'll have opinions, trust me. Mama especially. But they're important to me. What will you tell them? About me? The truth. That I met a man who was dealt a terrible hand and is learning to play it anyway. That he's kind and smart and makes me laugh. That he's rebuilding his life from nothing and I want to be part of that. She met his eyes steadily. And that he's in a wheelchair because, yeah, that's part of your reality. But it's not the most interesting thing about you. What is? The most interesting thing? Selena considered. That you're capable of change. Most people aren't. They decide who they are at 20 and just stay that way. But you lost everything, and instead of giving up, you're becoming someone new. That's rare. That's special. They spent the afternoon in the park, talking and eating and watching people live their lives. Children played, dogs chased balls, couples walked hand in hand. Normal things, beautiful things. Things June Young had forgotten to notice during his years of violence and power. I used to think this was boring, he admitted. Regular life. I chased extremes. Power, money, respect through fear. Anything normal felt like failure. And now? Now this feels like the most valuable thing in the world. Just being here. With you. Being allowed to be ordinary. You're not ordinary, Selena said, lacing her fingers through his. But you're learning to be human again. That's different. 3 weeks in, reality crashed back. June Young was at the cafe when Daejung appeared. His former second-in-command, the man who'd pulled him from the wreckage. Mid-30s, handsome in a dangerous way, with the same tattoos that marked June Young's past. "We need to talk," Daejung said in Korean, sliding into the booth without invitation. His eyes flickered to Selena, who was serving another table. "Privately," June Young felt his jaw tighten. "Whatever you have to say it here. You're being watched, followed. Someone's tracking your movements." Daejung's voice was low, urgent. "The Park family, they're not satisfied with how things ended. They want to finish what they started." Ice flooded June Young's veins. The Park family, ruthless, vindictive, the ones who'd ordered the hit that had destroyed his life. "Why now? It's been 6 months. I'm no threat." "You survived. That's threat enough. Plus," Daejung hesitated. "They heard about the girl, the black waitress. They think she's leverage. She's nothing to them. She's civilian, uninvolved. She's everything to you. I can see it, which means they can too." Daejung leaned forward. "Boss, you need protection. Come back. Let me assign security. You can't face this alone. I'm not your boss anymore. Haven't been for 6 months. You'll always be my boss, my friend. And I won't let you die because you're too proud to accept help." Daejung's expression softened. "Please, let me protect you. Let me protect her." Selena appeared then, coffee pot in hand, eyes sharp as she assessed Daejung. "Everything okay here?" "Fine," June Young said automatically. "Lying's a bad habit." She turned to Daejung, switching to Korean with surprising fluency. "I'm Selena. You must be Daejung. June Young's mentioned you." Daejung's eyebrows rose. "You speak Korean." "Enough to know when men are discussing something dangerous in front of me, like I'm not here." She set down the coffee pot. "So what's the threat? Someone coming after June Young?" "You don't need to worry about this," June Young said, switching to English. "This is my past. My problem. If someone's threatening you, it's our problem." Selena's tone brooked no argument. "I'm not some delicate flower you need to protect. Tell me what's happening." June Young and Daejung exchanged glances. Finally, June Young sighed. "The family who tried to kill me 6 months ago, they're not done. Daejung thinks they're targeting me again. And you because you're important to me." Selena absorbed this with remarkable calm. "Okay, so what do we do?" "We?" June Young stared at her. "There is no we in this. You need to stay away from me until this is resolved. For your safety." "Not happening." Selena crossed her arms. "You don't get to make that choice for me. If there's danger, we face it together. We figure it out together. That's how this works." "Selena, you don't understand. These people are ruthless. They kill without hesitation. If they think hurting you will hurt me, then we make sure they can't hurt me. Accept the security this man is offering. Take precautions. But we don't run from each other. That's not how I do relationships." Daejung watched this exchange with growing respect. "She's smart and brave. Boss, listen to her." "I'm not putting her in danger," June Young said stubbornly. "I'm already in danger. The moment I cared about you, I became a target." Selena's voice softened. "But June Young, I'd rather be in danger with you than safe without you. So stop trying to be noble and let's be practical. What do we actually need to do?" The question hung in the air. Finally, Daejung spoke. "Security detail for both of you. No solo trips anywhere. I'll assign my best people. They'll be discreet but effective. And boss, you need to move. That apartment isn't secure. I'm not running. It's not running. It's strategic relocation. I have a place. Fully accessible, top floor security, good sightlines. You'd be safer there. And me? Selena asked. You move in with him, or you get your own security detail. But Ms. Morrison, you can't go home alone anymore. Not until this is resolved. Selena looked at June Young. Looks like we're moving fast. You okay with that? I'm not okay with any of this. But if the choice is losing you or accepting help, June Young reached for her hand. I choose you. Every time, I choose you. The new apartment was in a high-rise downtown, top floor, with accessible design throughout and security that would make a bank vault jealous. Daijung had clearly been preparing for this, which meant he'd never stop watching over June Young, even from a distance. Selena moved in with a single duffel bag and remarkable calm. My brothers are going to have questions, she said, unpacking in what was now their bedroom. Especially Marcus. He's protective. How many brothers? 3. Marcus is oldest, 32, works construction. DeAndre is 28, high school teacher, and Terrell is 24, still figuring his life out. She smiled. They're going to want to meet you, probably try to intimidate you. Fair warning, they're all over 6 feet and enjoy flexing. I'm a former gang leader who's been threatened by professional killers. I think I can handle your brothers. These are different kinds of threats. These are hurt our sister and will make you disappear threats. Very personal. But Selena was smiling. Also, Mama's going to feed you, like aggressively. It's her love language. You're going to gain 10 pounds. The domesticity of it, discussing her family, unpacking clothes, planning meals, felt surreal. A month ago, June Young had been alone in a studio apartment, waiting to either die or find a reason to live. Now he had security teams, a woman he loved unpacking in his bedroom, and the promise of future Sunday dinners with her family. I never thought I'd have this, he said quietly. Selena turned from the closet. Have what? This. Normal life. Someone who stays. Family dinners and brothers who threaten me, and a woman who doesn't run when things get dangerous. She crossed to him, settling on his lap carefully. They'd figured out what worked. She knew how to distribute her weight, how to position herself so his paralysis didn't matter. You have it now, and June Young, you deserve it. All of it. They kissed slowly, and June Young let himself believe her, let himself imagine a future beyond survival. But in the back of his mind, the threat lingered. The Park family watching, waiting, and he knew that before he could truly move forward, he'd have to face his past one final time. The attack came 2 weeks later. June Young was leaving physical therapy when the van pulled up, unmarked, windows tinted. He barely had time to react before Daejung's security detail was there, weapons drawn, forming a barrier between him and the threat. Get him inside, someone shouted. Now! But June Young had seen the face in the van's passenger seat. Park Min-seok, the heir to the family that had destroyed his life. Young, arrogant, with his father's cruelty and none of his strategic patience. The van sped away before shots could be fired, but the message was clear. We can reach you anytime. That night, in the safety of their apartment, Selena found June Young on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Daejung told me what happened. I need to end this, June Young said without turning. They won't stop. And eventually they'll get past security. They'll hurt you to hurt me. So what are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Negotiate or eliminate the threat. Either way, this ends. Selena was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved to stand beside him, taking his hand. I won't tell you not to do what needs doing. I know who you were. Know you're capable of violence when necessary. But June Young, don't let them make you into that person again. You've worked too hard to become someone new. What if that's the only language they understand? What if the only way to protect you is to become the monster I was? Then you do what you have to do, but you come back to me, the real you, not the monster. Promise me that. He pulled her close, feeling her warmth against him. I promise. But Selena, if things go wrong, they won't. Because you're smarter than them, and you have something they don't. Something worth protecting, something worth living for. She kissed him fiercely. You have me, and I'm not letting you go. The meeting was arranged through intermediaries. Neutral territory, a warehouse in El Segundo, empty except for the two parties and their small delegations. Jun Young arrived with Daijung and three others. Park Min-shok brought twice that number. Lee Jun-young, Park said in Korean, voice dripping with contempt, or what's left of him. Tell me, how does it feel? Being nothing? Having nothing? I have everything that matters, Jun-young replied calmly. You just can't see it because you're still measuring worth in territory and fear. Philosophy from a cripple. How touching. Park circled Jun-young's wheelchair like a predator. You cost my family territory when you rose to power. Now you've cost us more by refusing to die. This ends tonight. It does, Jun-young agreed, but not the way you think. I'm offering you a deal. My remaining assets, legitimate businesses worth millions, in exchange for guaranteed safety. Mine and my woman's. Your woman? Park laughed. The black waitress? I've seen her. Pretty. Would be a shame if something happened to that pretty face. Rage flooded through Jun-young, but he kept his expression neutral. Touch her, and you'll learn that losing my legs didn't cost me all my resources. I still have connections. People loyal not to power, but to me. Push me, and you'll find out what a man with nothing left to lose can accomplish. Threats from a man in a wheelchair. I'm terrified. You should be. Daijung stepped forward. Because Lee Jun-young isn't making threats. He's offering you an out, a way to win without more bloodshed. But if you refuse, if you insist on this war, then we'll give you one. And Min-shok, you're not your father. You're not smart enough to win this fight. The insult landed. Park's face flushed with anger. You think I need to be smart? I have the numbers, the weapons, the power. And I have nothing to lose, Jun-young said quietly. That makes me infinitely more dangerous. Take the deal. Walk away with your pride and my assets. Or refuse, and see what happens when you threaten the only thing I care about. The standoff stretched. Park's men shifted, hands moving toward weapons. Daijung's team mirrored them. The warehouse felt like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Then Park laughed. Fine. The cripple wants to buy his safety? I'll take your businesses, your money, everything you have left, and in exchange, you and your woman get to live. But Lee Jun-young, if I ever see you in my territory again, the deal's off. Agreed. Draw up the papers. They negotiated details with lawyers over the next hour. Jun-young signed away the last pieces of his father's empire, businesses he'd built, property he'd acquired, investments that would have secured his future. All of it gone, in exchange for a single promise, safety for him and Selena. When it was done, when the contracts were signed and witnessed, Jun-young felt something unexpected. Relief. He'd spent 7 years building and protecting that empire. And now in one meeting, he'd traded it all for a chance at a different life. Was it worth it? Daejung asked as they drove back. Everything you gave up? Jun-young thought about Selena, waiting for him at home, about Sunday dinners with her family, about the way she looked at him like he was whole, about the possibility of a future measured in love instead of territory. Yes, he said, every cent, every business, every piece of my father's legacy. It was all worth it. When Jun-young arrived home, Selena was pacing. She launched herself at him the moment he was through the door, checking for injuries, searching his face for signs of trauma. I'm fine, he assured her. It's over, we're safe. What did you give them? Everything. Every business, every asset, everything I had left from that life. He pulled her onto his lap, kneading her close. I bought us a future, Selena. A clean one. No more looking over our shoulders. Jun-young, that was your security, your inheritance. You gave up everything for you, for us, for the chance to build something real instead of living in the shadow of what I was. He cupped her face. I don't regret it. Not for a second. Selena's eyes filled with tears. You're the most ridiculous, noble, frustrating man I've ever met. Is that a yes? A yes to what? Jun-young produced a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple ring. No diamond, just a band of silver with Korean characters engraved inside. A yes to marrying me, to building this new life together, to taking a chance on a man who has nothing left but love to offer. Selena stared at the ring, then at him. The engraving. What does it say? You are my reason. Because Selena, you are. You're why I kept going when I wanted to give up. You're why I faced my past instead of running. You're why I'm not afraid of the future anymore." "Yes," Selena whispered. "Yes, you ridiculous man. Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed like they were sealing a promise. Not just to each other, but to the life they'd fought for. The impossible love between a former gang boss and a waitress from Compton. Between a man learning to live without his legs and a woman who taught him he didn't need them to be whole. 6 months later, they married in Selena's mother's backyard. Small ceremony, just family and the few friends who'd stuck around through everything. Daejung was there, standing as Jun Young's best man. Selena's brothers had initially been skeptical of the gangster in a wheelchair, but Jun Young had won them over with patience, humility, and his obvious devotion to their sister. "You hurt her and I don't care about that wheelchair," Marcus had threatened. "I'll make you regret it." "If I hurt her, I'll help you," Jun Young had replied, "because she deserves better than anything I could ever give her. But I'm going to spend every day trying anyway." The ceremony was in both English and Korean, honoring both their heritages. When it came time for vows, Jun Young spoke from his heart. "I was alone on New Year's Eve, convinced my life was over. And you saw past the wheelchair, past the broken parts, to someone worth saving. You took me out to celebrate when I'd forgotten how. Taught me that being paralyzed didn't mean being dead. Showed me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when things are hard." Selena's vows were equally simple. "You were the sad man in the corner booth, and I decided you needed someone to remind you that you're still here, still breathing, still worth something. I never expected to fall in love. But Jun Young, you're the bravest person I know, and I can't wait to build the rest of our life together." They kissed as husband and wife while her family cheered, and Daejung wiped away tears he'd deny later. And Jun Young, sitting in his wheelchair, with his wife on his lap and her family surrounding them with love, understood something crucial. He'd lost everything in that accident, but in losing it, he'd found what actually mattered. Not power, not territory, not the empire his father had built. Just this, a woman who loved him, a family who accepted him, and the quiet, revolutionary act of choosing to live, really live, despite everything that said he shouldn't. The paralyzed Korean Mafia boss and the black waitress who'd taken him out to celebrate. An impossible love story that started on New Year's Eve in a cafe and became something neither of them could have imagined. Something real, something lasting, something worth more than any empire.